Can Alex Pereira actually become the first ever 3-division champ? Recently there's been some rumors about Pereira potentially moving up once again and facing Tom Aspinall for the interim heavyweight belt. And if Pereira were to win that, he would be the first ever 3-division champ, even though it would be an interim title. But a lot of people are wondering whether or not Pereira can legitimately compete at the heavyweight division and at the top of the heavyweight division as well. But quickly, before we get the video started, for those of you who may not know, I'm Juicy MMA. I make opinionative MMA content, and if you guys enjoy videos similar to this, hit that subscribe button, that like button, and that post notification bell. But anyways, let's get into it. Alex Pereira's fighting career so far has been extremely impressive. He was able to become a 2-division champ in kickboxing and even being inducted to the Glory Kickboxing Hall of Fame, and once he switched over to MMA, he was able to quickly become a 2-division champ in the UFC. And I think regardless of what happens throughout the rest of Pereira's MMA career, I think he should eventually be inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame. And the reason why I say this is due to the fact that he was able to become a 2-division champ. Although he didn't necessarily need all that many MMA fights in order to accomplish this, regardless of that fact, he was able to beat some very impressive guys, and he was able to do so in very impressive fashion. And I think just solely based upon the fact that he was able to become champ in 2 separate weight classes is a huge accomplishment within itself, and I think regardless of how he was able to accomplish it and in how little fights he was able to accomplish it, it still is impressive enough for me personally to induct him into the UFC Hall of Fame. But after recently beating Yuri Prochazka and becoming a 2-division champ, there's been some rumors about Alex potentially moving up for a second time and moving up to the heavyweight division. And the rumored opponent that Pereira would be going up against would be Tom Aspinall. Due to the fact that the current heavyweight champ of the division is Jon Jones, but he's currently injured, and it seems like the UFC is keen on Jon Jones fighting Stipe Miocic, and probably regardless of who wins that fight, they're both going to retire. And Tom Aspinall is currently the interim champ of the heavyweight division, so it kind of makes a lot of sense. Also due to the fact that Tom doesn't necessarily have an opponent. He doesn't want to fight Ciryl Gane, and besides Ciryl Gane, everybody else is really taken at the top half of the heavyweight division, so this could potentially work between Pereira and Tom Aspinall. But now that we got that out of the way, let's look at both of these guys' games and see what they do well out there. And let's start off with Alex Pereira. So it's pretty clear what Alex does well out there. He's a striker. He's a guy that has a lot of different abilities on the feet. Whether you talk about his jab, whether you talk about his uppercuts, his hooks, his signature left hook, it's pretty clear that he has a ton of power and speed within his hand. He can put you out in an instant with that signature left hook, he can put you out with other shots as well, and overall it's pretty clear that his punching ability is at a very, very high level. But even besides his punches, Pereira does a really nice job at throwing kicks as well. Whether you talk about throwing kicks to the legs, and in my personal opinion, I think he's probably the best leg kicker in the entire UFC. Whether you talk about throwing kicks to the body or even throwing kicks to the head, it's pretty clear that Pereira on the feet, whether you talk about his punches or whether you talk about his kicks, is a guy that's very versatile and very talented at both. But even besides those two abilities, Pereira does a really nice job at utilizing footwork and utilizing his hands in order to keep himself safe. And overall, there definitely is a lot to like about Pereira's stand-up. But now, let's move on to Pereira's ground game. So when you look at Alex's ground ability, it definitely isn't necessarily the best, and there's not all that much to it. In terms of his takedown defense, Pereira can stop takedowns at times, but with that being said, he definitely does get taken down a little bit more than he would like. But once he does get taken down, he does also have a really nice ability to get back up. Pereira does a really nice job at moving to the fence, and once he gets to the fence, he utilizes that to wall walk and stand back up. But there's also been some other times where Pereira isn't able to get back up and he's on the ground for extended periods of time. And his fight against Jan Blachowicz is a perfect example of this, as in that fight, Alex ended up getting taken down relatively early on, and Jan did a really nice job at getting to Pereira's back and threatening submissions. But one thing that I will say is Alex Pereira definitely has pretty good and maybe even really good jiu-jitsu defense, as he had a guy in Jan Blachowicz on his back for an extended period of time, but he did a really nice job at tucking his chin and fighting the hands, and overall avoiding the submission attempts that Jan was trying to get. So although it is pretty clear that Pereira isn't necessarily going to do anything all that offensive on the ground or even offensively wrestle, if the fight does go to the ground, there are some positives to Pereira's game, and he definitely has shown a nice ability to defend submissions. But now, let's move on to Tom Aspinall's game. So when you look at Tom Aspinall, it's pretty clear that this guy can literally do everything out there. In terms of his striking, this guy is just very, very good. He does a great job at throwing out that jab in order to set up other punches, whether you talk about the right straight, whether you talk about uppercuts or hooks. Tom does a really nice job at throwing out all his punches with a ton of power while also being extremely fast. Now, besides his punching ability, Tom also does a really nice job at throwing kicks to the legs, body, and head. And overall, when you look at Tom's striking game, it's pretty clear that this guy is extremely talented and is also extremely gifted. Because I think the two biggest things that jump out to me personally when you look at Tom's striking is the overall speed that he throws his shots with, which is just incredible for the heavyweight division, but also he has a ton of power, whether you talk about in his kicks or whether you talk about in his punches. And I think those two factors, along with some other factors, are a huge reason for why Tom has become such a dangerous striker at the heavyweight division. But besides his striking, Tom also has a really nice ability to wrestle. He does a great job at getting the fight to the ground, and once the fight does get to the ground, this is probably the best aspect of his game, as Tom does a really nice job at utilizing his jiu-jitsu, and he understands that he needs to find the position over the submission. I mentioned this in a lot of my videos, but there's a bunch of guys out there that look for the submission right away, even if they don't necessarily have the best position, and a lot of times they end up losing the position and end up not getting the submission, and their opponent gets right back up. But with Tom, it's pretty clear that he does a great job at holding his position in order to find TKO finishes with ground and pound strikes, or eventually find that submission. And overall, I think when you look at Tom's game from top to bottom, it's pretty clear that this guy is one of the elite fighters. He's a guy that's extremely versatile out there, whether you talk about his striking or his ground game, but he's also one of those rare guys that are extremely elite at both of those individual abilities as well. But now, let's move on to this potential fight between Pereira and Aspinall and see whether or not Pereira could legitimately compete at the heavyweight division and could legitimately compete against the best fighter, in my opinion, at the heavyweight division in Tom Aspinall. Now, I definitely think this potential matchup is very interesting. On the feet, I do actually think Alex Pereira could potentially have an advantage. Both of these guys are pretty technical, but I think it's pretty clear that Pereira is a more technical of the two guys. On the feet, I think Pereira would do a really nice job at utilizing the speed advantage that he's probably going to have over Aspinall. He's going to do a really nice job at throwing out those great leg kicks. He's going to do a great job at throwing out jabs. He's going to do a great job at throwing out that signature left hook. And I do think, although Aspinall probably is going to have the more power of the two, I do at the same time think that Pereira definitely does have the potential to hurt Aspinall on the feet, especially if Aspinall continues to keep his chin up in the air. And we also haven't seen Pereira at heavyweight, so he's probably going to pack a bigger punch at the heavyweight division than he currently does at the light heavyweight division. So there definitely is that opportunity, and there definitely is that chance that Pereira could potentially land on Aspinall, and he could potentially hurt Aspinall on the feet. But with that being said, I do think there is a lot more danger for Alex Pereira, as Aspinall probably is going to have the more power out of the two guys. He definitely is going to be the bigger fighter out of the two guys, and I think it's just going to be a lot more dangerous for Pereira on the feet, even if Pereira is a more technical striker. But if the fight goes to the ground, it's going to be very difficult for me personally to see Pereira not getting submitted or potentially getting finished with ground and pound strikes. I just think Aspinall is way too good on the ground, and since he is going to have a size advantage of Pereira, and since Pereira hasn't necessarily done a great job at stopping takedowns in the past, I think it's going to be relatively easy for Aspinall to take the fight to the ground, and if he's able to get the fight to the ground, I think he could potentially be a little bit too much for Pereira, and he would eventually find a submission. Now, as I said before, there definitely is a potential that Pereira could have success on the feet. He definitely could hurt Aspinall, but at the end of the day, if I had to make a prediction about this fight, I probably would say I think the most likely scenario would be Aspinall via submission. But I guess only time will tell what does end up happening in this potential matchup that could potentially happen at UFC 300. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think Alex Pereira could potentially beat Tom Aspinall at the heavyweight division, or do you not think so? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy, check one of these two videos popping up now, and until the next time, peace out, guys.